Hi, this is Alvin Taveras. I'm the president of Build to Rent. I'm also your host here at the Cape Coral Investor Network podcast. And one of the reasons why I love having this podcast is I get to speak to some of the heavy hitters in the industry, people who are doing over 80 flips per year, people who are actively managing over 300 properties in the area, and people who run their own brokerage and property management team. One of the few individuals that can meet that threshold is someone like Ashley Simonelli, who's our guest here today. And one of the things that I enjoyed about our interview was not only her insights in the market and what's happening in the marketplace right now, but how to properly manage properties, how to properly flip properties, and just her perspective on what makes this area so unique. So I hope you enjoy the interview. We're here with Ashley Simonelli, and you were just telling me about the benefits of Cape Coral versus other investment options.
Yeah, I think that Cape Coral is a great area. Like I said, there's a lot of people moving there. They have a multi-million-dollar project going on downtown that's going to bring more businesses to the area, going to bring more foot traffic to the area. And overall, the properties hold their value really well and appreciate at a great rate. I just think Cape Coral is a really good area.
Yeah, so a lot of people, when they spend time looking at Google Maps, they see nearby beaches. They think, well, that's probably a great short-term rental market. And you and I might disagree on this one, but you actually think that long-terms are far and above a better option than short-term options.
So I think there's exceptions to every rule, but yes, my personal opinion, and I've done both. I actually took one of my one bedroom, one bathroom personal rentals, and I did Airbnb and short-term rentals just to kind of get a feel for it. And I have managed one other one for a client of mine who pretty much wouldn't take no for an answer because they trust you and they want everything in one place, and I get it. But there's exception to every rule, but generally speaking, there's a lot more overhead that goes into short-term rentals than I was initially expecting when I got into it. And I can imagine it's like that for investors as well. And then you add in the additional restrictions that, like at Cape Coral as a great example, you can't rent anything in Cape Coral for under 7 days. And now have to have all of your short-term rentals registered as well, which is additional cost. And there's a lot more restrictions and regulations and costs associated with short-term rentals than a lot of people realize. Annual rentals, and my personal opinion is that there's way more wear and tear on your property with short-term than long-term also. And I know that kind of sounds a little contradicting, but when you take into consideration that your short-term rentals are fully furnished turnkey and you have people going in, let's say every other week or every other month or so, and it's just a steady, rotating door, it can be hard on your property.
Yeah, I think that short-term rentals in Cape Coral, there's two probably groups of people where it makes sense. One, I think you and I agree on this one, is someone who's going to buy the house anyway as a second home. It makes sense to try to offset some of the costs and maybe make a profit at the end. And there's another group where is excited about running a one-unit hotel, right? Where they're very operationalized, they're very systematic, they care about the marketing, but they're looking to take on that responsibility and they're looking to build a competitive advantage in that aspect of it. When you decide you're going to pay 20% property management fees plus all the Airbnb fees, having more wear and tear in the property, doing a lot more landscaping, pool cleaning, all those kind of things, it makes it a lot harder. So it's either a fully hands-on venture that you're looking to and you're excited about taking on, or you're going to buy the property anyway because you and your family want to enjoy the property a few days out of the year, and you want to offset your costs as much as possible.
Right. I get a lot of calls from investors just like that want to use the property a few days out of the year, want to rent it while they're not using it. They're thrilled if they can break even, but just offsetting the majority of the cost even is really their only goal. And I think that's great. And I think that the short-term rental market has a lot of opportunity. And I think that it's constantly evolving, which is really cool. It's more now about the experience versus the actual property itself. So I do think that there is opportunity there. And like I said, there's exceptions to every rule, but generally speaking, I think I'm going to stick to the annuals for now.
Yeah, one of the questions that comes up specifically with the annuals is people ask, where do people work?
That's a good question. So a lot of people commute. They want it. You can get more bang for your buck in Cape Coral versus Fort Myers. So you can get more bang for your buck there. Get bigger house, more property. You can get spaced out property where you don't have neighbors on top of you still. Those things don't exist as much in Fort Myers anymore. And then they commute to Fort Myers for work, which is, in some cases, my office is in Fort Myers. So it takes me, 10 minutes to get over the Cape Coral Bridge to get to my office. So it's not a long commute at all. It's just literally across of a bridge.
Yeah, one of the things that I think we often forget is what happens with generational shifts. So after World War II, as an example, we saw an explosion of suburbia where a lot of military vets came back with their VA loans and they wanted new houses in the suburbs. That was a whole generation of the baby boomers that had that experience. I'm under the belief that we're going to that same thing now, where millennials were initially drawn to urban city centers where they
Mhm.
had more arts, more culture, more live music, places to eat. And now we're at a point where we're seeing them become their parents or their or their grandparents for that matters, where you want your dog to have room to play. You are finally starting a family. You're 10 years delayed, but you're still finally starting your family. You've had a safety net that's been there for a while, and
Mhm.
it's time to finally become an adult and buy your own property. And we're seeing that people are prefacing having larger spaces. They're having a preference for larger homes, and there's definitely a need to finally enter adulthood. And a lot of times that means going to suburbia. Would you consider Cape Coral to be one of those markets that's attracting a lot of those now, but becoming adults, millennials?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll also add in that over the last 2 years, there was kind of a wild card thrown in there as well, where you had people who were in specific areas because of work, where these companies now have gone remote only, and they're literally able to live anywhere that they want and still work their job. So those people are moving out of those cities where they were, kind of stuck because their job was there, and they're moving to places just like Cape Coral because they want out of that. They want out of the city, they want out of the congestion, and they just want more room. When people are stuck in their houses, all day working from home, it's a blessing in itself, but it can get kind of close quarters in there, I'm sure. So, getting more house, getting more property is definitely at the forefront of what we're seeing.
Yeah, and the pandemic that we experienced over the last 2 years makes the next question very exciting, which is how's the market? And I'll tee you up. I know you have some stats that you want to dive into, but I'll start by saying that the U.S. government, they don't call it money printing, but they basically created $3.5 trillion. This is brand new dollars and threw it into the market. Florida is also the number one fastest growing state in the nation. My stats say 1,000 per month, per day. I think you said 900. And we're also number one in job creation. So with that said, Ashley, how's the market?
The market is a circus. It is amazing, and it is challenging all at the same time. So the amazing part is that we have all these people moving here and everyone needs a home. The challenging part is we don't have homes. So the challenging part is that our inventory is at an all-time low. So obviously supply and demand, that means that your prices are going to increase. We're seeing the very similar on the rental market as well. Inventory is low, so rents are increasing. And people who were moving here previously were able to get a home built in, like, let's say 6 months for a standard builder grade home. And now that same exact home is now taking a year to a year and a half. So we can't even build homes quick enough to accommodate all of the people who are coming here. So it's, there's still properties out there. There's still a lot of off-market deals happening. They are harder to come by. You got to work a little bit harder for them, but they're out there. It is challenging though to find homes for everyone who's looking for one.
Right. I think the key is your motivation. You want to play to win, right?
Right. I
It's
mean, you
you know
having an agent in your corner that has that mentality and who is going to go to bat for you and do whatever it takes by any means necessary is going to be key, I think.
And I think the key is also, if you're a buyer or an investor, you also have to make it clear that you're planning to win, right?
Right. Yeah.
Because if you're looking to throw out lowball offers without any rationale behind them,
Mhm.
that's a tough outing, and it creates a lot of what I call brain damage, and you want to avoid that as much as possible.
Yeah, yeah, it's definitely a more competitive market than what I've ever seen. And I started my business, like I mentioned earlier, in the recession, and I thought that was a hot rental market then as well, because we had, a lot of these developers that foreclosed. We were renting out those properties that the bank kind of took back, and there's just a lot going on. But it was nothing compared to what we're seeing here. I mean, just the amount of people who are looking to both rent and buy is astonishing.
Yeah, and from a human element, I think we all are very sympathetic to those. I think rental rates have increased 20% in the last year. So we're sympathetic to those who've been here for a while. But I've heard this said by another investor, where he says that everyone in the past had a discount on paradise, and now we're paying market value for living in paradise.
Right. Yeah. And it is, hard for some renters that have been here for a while. They are seeing an increase, but hopefully, landlords and investors and property managers are also seeing the value in having a great tenant, right? Because you can increase the rents 20%, and actually, I think our rents at Lee County has increased almost 40%
Mhm.
since 2020. And so that's a substantial increase, right? And you can increase your tenants that are currently there, but if they're taking good care of the property, if they're paying their bills on time, they're preserving the property, would you really want to run them out? Even if it costs you 1 month vacancy, sometimes they can eat into that, 20% increase or what have you. So really analyzing the full picture, I think is imperative for, running your investment business optimally anyway.
Right. And one of the things you mentioned, two things: supply and demand. And when we look at demand, if you spend time here, it's pretty obvious why there's high demand. And if you visited another coastal city where you check your papers when you go to a restaurant, it's pretty pretty clear why Florida's doing well.
Right.
There's also the supply side, where after the last financial housing, a lot of builders got wiped out, and there was very few permits for new construction being made at the time. We're
Mhm.
finally starting to catch up now, but now we also have delays with the permitting process, of getting windows, appliances in the property as well. And
Right.
now we're starting to see things like it takes a long time to get the land. Uh,
Mhm.
can you walk us through kind of on the supply side and where we currently sit?
Yeah, so I think it's a combination of both having a hard time getting some materials in, and then also having a hard time finding people to do some of the work, like you mentioned, in the land cleared and prepped and bringing the fill in and stuff like that. There has been, a severe shortage of employees and people who are willing to do that work. And I think that that's part of, and this is my personal opinion, it's not based on any substantial facts, but from what I've seen with the businesses that I own, the businesses that my husband owns, and it just seems like that's a major a major key in the game as well.
And with supply being lower than it has been in the past, uh, there are people still flipping. People are still finding properties, so able to flip them and make a good profit. What are some of the advice you would give to someone looking to flip in this market?
Yeah, like I said, they're still out there. I work a little bit harder for them, but I think we did 82 flips total last year. So they're definitely out there. You just got to get really creative with how you're finding them, first and foremost. And I think having the right team in place is imperative, to make sure that you have somebody boots on the ground, right? Who's going to be at the property, who's going to be able to put eyes on the property, who's going to be able to contract and watch over vendors and things of that sort. I think is going to be the make or break when it comes to the flipping.
Yeah. So you mentioned you did over 80 flips last year. Really impressive. I want to get your take on three finishes, as far as after the rehab, what finishes you choose to go with. And I want to get your thoughts on each of them. Granite versus quartz.
Sorry, Alan, you broke up at the end there. I only got the three finishes is
Yeah.
where
Okay. So you mentioned you did over 80 flips last year. That's very impressive. I want to get your thoughts on the finishes that you choose to go with on your flips. What are your thoughts on granite versus quartz?
I think it depends on the location of the property. In general, I think they are very comparable, and I don't see, so Granite, actually they're very comparable in cost when you're purchasing them now as well, where Granite used to be considerably more than Quartz. It's not like that anymore. They're very close. But in general, where if you have a property, towards Fifth Avenue, Naples, you're most likely going to want to do higher end finishes. But if you have a property, let's say in Lehigh Acres, and it's going to be, most likely an investment based on the location, the type of home or duplex or whatever it may be, then I would say Quartz would be more than sufficient. So it's going to be very dependent on the actual property. In general, we have a couple of things that we do throughout most of our properties, like LVP is a great one. Instead of having to do tile, LVP is
that was my next question.
Yeah. So it's way less labor. That would be like a super high-end property, in a, let's say Port Royale, for instance. I wouldn't put LVP in a Port Royale home, right? But most 99% of the homes that we flipped last year, we did so using LVP, the same paint colors just to spruce up the aesthetics. And it's great because you don't have to chip up anything. If there's carpet, you remove it. But besides that, you can lay it down over tile. And, I had a home, my home, actually, the one that I first purchased in 2012, when I learned what LVP was, had different flooring in every single room, different flooring in the kitchen, the living room, all the bedrooms, completely different. And I was able to take this LVP and bring it all together and have matching flooring throughout with minimal cost. So it's one of the, biggest items that we do in the homes that we flip that brings us the best return.
I agree. And if there's carpet, take the carpet out, put some window board underneath, make it level. And that's a great choice. What are your thoughts on epoxy in the bathrooms?
I actually just started using it. And again, it's going to be very dependent on the condition that you're working with as well, because if it's super old and there's water damage, you might not, you're most likely not going to be able to bring it together with epoxy. Right. But if it's a viable cabinet, counter, what have you, even the floors, I've seen epoxy on some of the floors. I don't necessarily care for that in residential. I think it looks better in commercial, but epoxy on the countertops specifically has been a savior, especially in some of our multifamilies and some of our rentals. I know my triplex, we used it as well. The cabinets and counters were in relatively great condition. They were old, but they were sturdy. They don't make them like they used to, right? Those cabinets and counters were in great shape, but appearance wise, they were like orange. So we were able to kind of go in and give it a more modern look for pennies on the dollar. I think it's a great resource to use. It won't work for every property, but it'll work for many.
Yeah, my last question before we unfortunately say goodbye is you've done some smaller units under 5, you've done some over. Can you walk us through, obviously commercial, the perception is it's taking a beating right now, but what's the reality?
So commercial, are you referring to like the sales or the management of, or kind of all of the above?
So what's your experience in the commercial space?
So the commercial residential with this, units, 5 units or more. I have managed several of them. I've never owned any, but my largest property that I own was a triplex. I've managed many, and I love being able to go in and take a property that is in a distressed situation where the tenants aren't paying or the bank took it back and it needs to be brought up, and really turn it into an income producing asset. There is nothing more rewarding to me because you can see the fruits of your effort, which is not always possible in our industry. So I really love that. As far as what we own, my husband and I own commercial industrial, and then we also own commercial retail. So we have a large plaza on Alico that is industrial flex. So we have some new businesses that are moving in there now. It's a brand new construction building. And then we have commercial industrial on the back 15 acres where it's just industrial companies, roofers and landscapers, and they go back there. They have yard space as well. So an acre to a half acre to an acre of yard space, and then 2,000 to 3,000 square foot of warehouse, depending on which one they're in. And I've not seen anything with that much of a demand outside of residential ever. It's incredible, the market. I mean, I guess there's just a lot of industrial companies operating out of Southwest Florida. There's a huge market for it. And I think that, from an investor's perspective, residential for me, and even some of the residential commercial, the, over 5 unit properties, stable than the commercial, industrial, and retail. I think that when the market does decide to take a turn, that's going to be hit much harder in the beginning. And I think that residential will be able to sustain a little bit better.
Yeah. With that said, Ashley, I do want to thank you for your time. Your details will be in the description of this video. Thank you so much. It's a Friday. Go enjoy your weekend, and we'll talk to you soon.
All right. Thank you for having me. Happy
Thank you. See
Friday.
ya.